Yeah, I'm Roger Vanek from Rogers Outdoors programming thing to try to entice you to get outdoors and do things and be successful in doing it. And today what I'd like to talk about is crab fishing out in Puget Sound primarily. A few things that you need to know before you go out. The crab season usually you'll need a license. First of all, you usually get like a shellfish license, which is like $17, and a Dungeness crab supplement card for $8.75, I think the number is. And the season usually opens about the 1st of July, and it ends, the first half of it ends the 1st of September. And at which time, when you're out there, they'll give you a punch card to punch daily how many crab you caught. And they have an allocation system between the Native Americans and the sports fishermen, and so they for a couple of weeks after the first, you mail your cards in by the shortly after the 1st of September, and they say, okay, there's more crab to be caught in different areas. It'll maybe be the South Sound or the Hood Canal area didn't take their allocation, or maybe up in the Everett area, they'll reopen the season usually about the 1st of October until the end of the year, and the crab take will be the same size limits, most of the same regulations, but you have to mail your card in the first time, otherwise they have a penalty of like $10 for not mailing your punch card in, and mail plus the second season. If you opt to get a second, you tell them that you want to go out again, the second season is free, but you have to mail your card in. So the way to do your crab fishing, there's two basic styles. Where I found the crab to be most frequently, you can fish out in Elliott Bay, you can fish, along the edges out at Shilsho, for example, mouths of rivers that salmon are going up and down. The crabs like to wait for stuff to be washed down the rivers. I like to, the general rule of thumb, if this is your first or second outing, is, and you've got your own boat, drive around a little bit and look for other people's crab pots and say, okay, that they probably know, they've been successful at that spot before, so throw some of your crab pots out fairly near where they are. And generally what you're going to find is the depth that most of the crab pots are out at are kind of like 40 to 100 feet deep. And so you're going to need, leaded line typically, like this is the general thing. You have to have a red and white float. This one's kind of faded out. Oh, here's a better red and white. Red and white float that says it's a crab pot thing. I usually, to keep my float, if there's a pretty good tide going through, I put a little bit of extra flotation on it to where my crab pot won't sink when the tide is rolling along. And when you find that spot to put your crab pot down, there's two different styles of crab pots. Now I prefer, you can look up on an internet on what a typical crab pot is, which is a square, rectangular square, maybe 3 feet by a foot thick, and each of the crab pots you're going to hang basically what you have is a little bait container, and you're going to put anything from salmon fish heads to carcasses of perch, which I use a lot. You can use you can buy pellets from the store, food pellets that smell quite a bit. You can use virtually any kind of fish. Some people even use chicken backs, they'll use turkey legs, just anything that has that meat scent to it. And usually for Dungeness, the fresher the bait is, the better you are going to do. the older the bait gets, you'll start catching red rock crab. For some reason, the Dungeonettes like the fresher, smell that, hey, it just died or something. Now, what I do, I like, when I go out, instead of going out on a fishing trip, I generally just take my canoe out, for example, and plan on what on doing nothing but crab fishing. And so what I do is I like ring nets. And usually if I go out with my wife, for example, I'll get a ring net that looks like this. And when you let it down in the water, it collapses. Let's see if I can kind of demonstrate that. It collapses and just sinks down to where the crab can walk on top of this net to try to get at this food that you've got in this little bait container. And you can see that it's held securely here by a snap onto the bottom of the thing, onto the bottom of the ring net. And you let it down with you usually keep 50 to 100 feet of rope, and you've got these little snaps on the rope that like this. Then you just snap this onto the ring net like this and let it down. Now the difference, one of the reasons I like the ring net as opposed to the, if I'm going out and I'm strictly going for crab, is the crab can almost immediately smell the scent and walk up on the onto the bait, and you can pull these pots in about 15 minutes after you drop them down. If you drop down a regular crab pot that only has gates that they have to push open to get inside of, the crabs spend a fair amount of time just wandering around, kind of saying, okay, how do I get at that bait? I can smell it, etc. And they crawl up on top of the pot, and it takes a couple hours a lot of times for your first crab to get in there. So you have to leave them out for extended periods of time, 2 to 4 hours. And if I'm just out only crabbing, I like to just set these down and put them in a row of maybe 4 of them for my wife and I. You can have two per person, and let them down, and by the time I paddle from one to the next and check for the crabs and take them out and rebait sometimes and drop it back down, my 20 minutes is up and I move on to the next pot and pull the next batch of them in. And basically the limit, the crab need to be 6 1/4 inches, and you have a little tool that you stick kind of across the widest part. You look this up on the internet to see where you measure. It's not the very widest part of the crab, it's just there's 2 little tips that come up, and you kind of put this down just behind those 2 tips to measure 6 1/4 inches. And these little gauges will tell you that. If you happen to go out and you don't have a gauge and you wonder, Jesus, is this crab big enough or not? If you have a dollar bill in your pocket, a dollar is 6 inches long, and you can kind of estimate what that extra 1/4 of an inch is in terms of the length, the size of your crab. Rock crab only have to be 5 inches long, the red rock crab, and you can keep 6 of them as well as 6 Dungeness on the same outing. And oftentimes you will catch an equal amount of both. So it's really a tasty outing if you really get into them. One of the things I like to do after, when I catch the crab and I bring them into the canoe or little boat that I'm in, I'll put them in a pail of water and let them, swim around a little bit and stay alive. And then right at the end of the trip, when I'm ready to go back in, I take and break the crabs in half and actually clean them on the spot. I'll take and I'll hold them by the edges and crack them over a pail or something like that. And then I'll take the two halves and peel the insides out. You have to leave the male, the thing that you can only keep male crabs, so there's a little kind of V-shaped, sexual identifier on the bottom of the crab that will say this is a male, and make sure that you can differentiate between a male and a female, otherwise you'll get a ticket, so you don't want to do that. So anyway, if you keep the fish, the crab, moving around fresh, and then just kind of, while they're still alive, crack them open rather than trying to drive all the way home with these crab and keep them alive. Because if that crab dies on you, it doesn't have enough oxygen in the water that it's in. As it's dying, it releases kind of a toxin into into the meat and will really spoil the taste for you and maybe even give you an upset stomach on behalf of that. So, it pays to keep your crab fresh. If you're going out there on a hot summer day, you might want to put them on ice after you've cracked them in half and killed them and cleaned them, before you take them on the way home. But, again, if you look, your basic tips are, A, buy a license, B, get some kind of gear like this, and also you don't necessarily need all of that. There are different devices, this being one of them, that you can hook this to your fishing pole and put some kind of bait inside, maybe a little piece of salmon or something like that, and then just cast it out. And when you off from a dock that you feel, oh, there's probably crab around here or something like that, and you'll actually feel the crab kind of tugging at it. You'll see your line go, jerk, jerk, jerk. And so what you do is these little, on this particular one, there's several different things. There's a snare on there that will sometimes tighten and wrap around the crab's leg, and you'll be able to, as long as you keep pressure on it and keep reeling in consistently, get it fairly close to you. That being said, sometimes the crab is actually just kind of hanging onto this bait box trying to get at it, and as you get it near the surface, he'll say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right, and he lets go. So if you've got a landing net, with a long enough handle to reach down there and get that crab, just as he lets go, just scoop down with a net and you have at it that way. Other people, there's other techniques of getting them also. Up in Bellingham Bay, for example, there's a long, shallow area that people just, go out in tennis shoes and cutoffs and with a rake and, something to put the crabs in, and just basically, see the crabs wandering around the bottom and catch them by hand. Another way is sometimes when the tide goes in and out, especially in areas that have a lot of grass, eelgrass basically in it. The crabs, instead of saying, well, I don't want to go out with the tide, I'll just kind of bury myself underneath this eelgrass. And so when the tide is out, sometimes you can walk across and look very closely at that eelgrass, and you'll be able to spot a bit of a shell sticking up, and you'll be able to uncover a crab. Sometimes they're actually mating, and you can get the male crab that way. There's a number of different ways of taking them. Again, it's just make sure you're in season, have a license. As soon as you get that crab in the boat, you're required to pencil it in that day. Okay, I just caught, this is my third Dungeness. You don't have to record rock crab, but you do have to record Dungeness. And and mail that card in later on to show how well you did. But anyway, it's a great, you know, if you haven't had, you know, Dungeness, you know, crab in a while, you will really get hooked on the sport. And quite often, you know, coming back with 6 crab, or you go out with a buddy and you know, you get a dozen crab between you, you can, it's just really a feast, and you will really enjoy yourself. So, you know, look for, there's a lot of hints on the internet on where to go. You know, Camano Island is good, and, you know, just, there are all kinds of hot spots, but, you know, other people's crab pots are going to lead you, you know, lead you to the gold, the brown gold that's down there. So enjoy yourself and eat well.